Harvest season should be a time for Iowa's farmers to feel proud of a year's hard work. But this year, that's not the case, thanks to far-right Republicans. Donald Trump's reckless tariffs have sparked a farm crisis by destroying our biggest market for soybeans, China. When Trump escalated his trade war, China stopped buying American soybeans. And now, China's turned to Argentina, buying 2.5 million tons and leaving our farmers behind. And what's Trump's solution? To offer a $20 billion bailout to Argentina's economy instead of fighting tooth and nail to reach a good deal with China. Meanwhile, bankruptcies are up, prices are down, and Iowa's farm families, the backbone of our rural economy, are being left behind. Our farmers shouldn't need bailouts. They need fair trade, stable markets, and leaders that fight for them, not against them. As a trade lawyer, I've spent my career negotiating with powerful corporations and the federal government, and I'm ready to fight for my communities. It's time we put an end to these trade wars, restore stability, and make sure America's farmers can do what they do best: feed the world and power our economy.
Farmers and workers in Iowa who once believed Trump's America First message are now watching their livelihoods collapse under the exact same policies that were supposed to protect them. Since siding with Obama twice, Iowa has become a stronghold for Donald Trump, yet perhaps no state has struggled more with his economic policies. During the first quarter of 2025, Iowa's GDP dropped by 6.1%. That's more than any other state aside from neighboring Nebraska. Manufacturing, which drives 17% of Iowa's economic output, has been hit with higher production costs in part because of steep tariffs on imports like aluminum and steel. Meatpacking plants, which help make Iowa the nation's leading pork producer, rely heavily on foreign-born workers, hundreds of thousands of whom saw their legal status stripped away by the president. Trump's war on renewable energy also threatens the wind industry that produces more than half of Iowa's electricity. Kirk Leeds, who is the chief executive of the Iowa Soybean Association, said, "This is as challenging as I've seen it. We've got uncertainties beyond compare." Additionally, Trump's massive bailout of Argentina has upset many Iowans, since China moved immediately after it was announced to lock up Argentine soybean exports to fill the gap from Beijing's boycott of American soy. One of the farmers, named Larry, asked, "Who are you subsidizing, our competitors or us?" This is what happens when political slogans replace actual economic policy. America First was supposed to protect farmers and manufacturers, but the numbers don't lie. Iowa's economy is tanking.
Hey, it's Sarah Trome-Garriott. Iowans woke up this morning to this headline in the Des Moines Register. Iowa farmers are facing an economic disaster, and Zach Nunn is okay with that. China has stopped buying our soybeans because of the reckless tariffs and trade war that Zach Nunn enthusiastically supports. And our farmers, our economy, we're facing billions in losses. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is preparing a $20 billion bailout for Argentina, and China is turning around and buying their soybeans, not ours. We deserve a leader in Washington who will work for Iowans, not a mindless party follower. In Congress, I'll always put Iowa's families, our farms, and our future first.
If you have ever driven across the state of Iowa, you may have noticed a very consistent landscape of corn and soybean fields. From Davenport to Council Bluffs and beyond, it's a lot of this. But have you ever wondered why we grow so much of just those two crops? And what the heck farmers are supposed to do when a country like China suddenly stops buying them? The reasoning behind our monocultural surroundings comes down to three things: our soil, our policies, and global demand. Iowa's rich prairie soil and Midwest climate make it perfect for row crops like corn and soy. Iowa's farms used to grow a wider variety of crops, but over time, that diversity disappeared. Why? Because that's not where the money was. U.S. farm policy pushed farmers towards a corn and soybean monoculture, locking it in through subsidies, crop insurance programs, and ethanol mandates that rewarded planting the same crops year after year. Today, nearly 90% of Iowa's farmland is dedicated to just corn and soybeans. Now, this isn't necessarily great for our soil or our environment, but for decades, global demand, especially from China, made it all make sense. China buys huge amounts of soybeans to feed livestock and make things like cooking oil. At one point, they bought a third of all U.S. soy exports. To put it into perspective, in 2024, just last year, China purchased $1.5 billion in Iowa soybeans. This year, China has not purchased a single dollar's worth. Iowa's farmers are currently harvesting soybeans to rot in bins because nobody's buying them. When demand for commodity drops like this, prices, what farmers actually get paid, collapse. Some farmers are now losing money per bushel just to get crops off the field. Thanks to the Trump administration's brilliant tariff idea, China is instead turning to countries like Brazil or Argentina to meet their soybean demands. And the real kicker is that Trump just sent $20 billion to bail out his political allies in Argentina. I'm serious, look that up. Meanwhile, American farmers are on the verge of bankruptcy and praying, literally, for divine intervention. So what's the solution here? Well, places like Iowa need to diversify their crops and offer more than just corn and soybeans, because growing things nobody wants to consume or buy is not helping anybody. Additionally, we could invest in local food processing and food systems to feed people here. 1 in 8 Iowans face hunger. There's no reason anybody living in a state that feeds the world should have to worry about putting food on the table. Additionally, we need to start having thoughtful, productive conversations about the future of farming in Iowa. Farmers are struggling badly, not just financially, but physically and mentally. Multiple studies have shown farmer suicide rates are 2 to 5 times higher than the national average. This is unacceptable. Politicians need to stop using farmers as props for their campaign ads and pawns in global trade wars. Iowa farmers deserve stability, and we all deserve a system that actually works.
We know that the trade situation is difficult and that the numbers don't look good, but that shouldn't mean we should be keeping the analysis away from the folks who need it the most.
The president for the Iowa Farmers Union is concerned about the recent changes to the outlook for U.S. agricultural trade. The report used to come in 2 parts, the raw number and the analysis explaining in detail what those numbers mean. It's information farmers used to predict how worldwide agricultural trade would perform, helping them make decisions about what to plant and where to sell.
We need to be armed with all the information and analysis that we can possibly have so that we can figure out all the decisions on the farm we need to. In the meantime, the prices that we have to pay for our inputs, fertilizer, chemicals, seed, they've gone up over the past decade. So we're really being squeezed in the middle right now.
Now, small farmers have to analyze that data themselves, putting them at a disadvantage in the world trade markets, according to the head of the economics department at Iowa State University.
The democratization of information requires that the U.S. Department of Agriculture provide not just raw numbers, but also enough information so that the people on both sides of the market are playing from a level playing field. And I think that's the concern that you have when you see the government starting to reduce its role as an information provider.
That data is used to make informed decisions on policy, according to a former USDA employee during the Biden administration and the chief economist at the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities.
When the federal government stops releasing that data or limits what can be done, it limits the kind of questions that we can ask and limits our understanding, not as academics or researchers, but as, the American public on the impact of our policies.
Iowa's News Now reached out to the Iowa office for the USDA, but was unable to get a response.
Doug Fuller's family has been farming in northern Polk County for generations.
Now I get to call all the shots.
He's already nervous about the cash crop he's about to start planting. Soybeans are the target of China's retaliatory tariff, 10% on certain imports from the United States, in response to President Trump's 10% blanket tariff on Chinese goods. Fuller is fearful it spells bad news for the 2025 harvest.
They aren't good for the other countries. They aren't good for me. And who could blame them putting reciprocal tariffs on us? It's just a match, and nobody's going to win.
China is one of the largest overseas markets for American soybeans. According to the USDA, the United States exported nearly $13 billion in soybeans to China last year alone. Fuller has already faced 2 years of bean prices dropping and says it looks as if the trend may continue.
Last year, we took a step back, and now we're taking another step back. So I'm, many of us we'll get through it, and it's going to be tough on others.
Are the Iowa farmers that $20 billion is going to their
$40 billion.
$40 billion is going to their competitors?
Oh, they're pissed. Oh yeah, and it's what's really interesting about it is the tariffs are the ones that create, like the trade war. The tariffs created the problem, got rid of the markets, and now we're going to pay them back with money from the tariffs that started the problem. Doesn't make any sense, right? They're more pissed. Farmers they don't want a bailout. Farmers want fair markets. That's what they want. They want good, fair markets. And they had that until Trump got there and started doing what he's doing, creating trade wars, creating chaos in the marketplace. And now they're trying to figure out what to do. And then, like you said, giving $40 billion to Argentina, it's a slap in the face. What I'm seeing is, it's condensing down Iowa to these major metropolitan areas, so they have more land to farm on, so more of those big ag corporations are making money hand over fist, and the small farmers are getting out of the way. That's what it seems like. So again, we need to fight for small farmers. We need to fight for working class people to prevent what's going on.
Donald Trump's support in farming counties, America's most farming dependent counties, overwhelmingly backed President-elect Donald Trump in this year's election by an average of 77.7%. Look at this. Look at this. Will somebody come over here and look at this? That's Iowa, by the way. Okay? For every farmer in this country that did not vote for Donald Trump, I just want to be clear that my heart goes out to you. It really does. Because you didn't have anything to do with this, but yet you are suffering the consequences of somebody else's decision. For the rest of you farmers across the United States, have the day you voted for. And don't make me say it no more.
I don't know, y'all. I'm still having a hard time believing that 77 million Americans voted to make Argentina great again. Because tell me, why did Donald Trump put out a Truth Social post today to cattle ranchers telling them they don't understand why they're getting screwed and to artificially reduce their prices? Explain to them why, and not that they were sold out to Argentina. So let's see if the cattle ranchers are dumb enough to believe this cow shit. Because I can already hear some of them saying the tariffs are going to work out. Just as long as we can ride out several months of no revenue and bankruptcy. Government controlling pricing and the market and the volume. That sure sounds like a word that Republicans and conservatives hate and really blame Democrats for. What word is that? I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, MAGA is mad about it. They're saying this is not the plan I was sold. And Farmers for Trump appalled. How could he do this? We were farmers for Trump. Why isn't Trump for the farmers? Furthermore, in case you missed it, the administration is already warning that Argentina beef might be diseased. But we're still going to import it. All right, but just to recap, in case you're lost in the sauce, Trump started a trade war. And then he bailed out Argentina, and he sold their soybeans to China instead of from our U.S. farmers. And he hasn't helped with any of this tariff revenue. And now he's bailing out Argentina again. And now he's saying we're going to buy their beef. So this just proves two things. Number one, tariffs are a scam. And secondly, that his supporters are dumb.
I just read about a janitor who became a farmer and is now a billionaire. His name's Stuart Resnick. Back in the 1960s, he's working as a janitor to pay his way through school. And before long, he gets the hang of it and decides to break out on his own. So he starts a company called White Glove Building Maintenance. He grows it to 1,000 employees, then sells the company. He settles down with his new wife, Linda, and they've got big plans. Fast forward to 1979, they buy a flower company called Teleflora. Linda's a marketing whiz, and she gets people to buy more than just flowers. Before long, sales skyrocket. Then they buy the Franklin Mint. Linda runs the same playbook, and again, sales spike. Then Stuart and Linda take all their money and start buying up farmland in California. And this is the big one. They launch the Wonderful Company. They're selling wonderful pistachios and almonds, halos, mandarins, and they sell millions of lemons every year. Today, Stuart and Linda might be the biggest farmers in the world, and still going strong. If you like this, then you'll love my podcast. Tune in now.
Okay, and then of course tariffs. We talked in May. Farmers were along for the ride, but they said it would have to be a small ride, a short ride. And we're still sitting here now in August, and things, we see a little bit of delays. We've seen some get done, but yesterday the president sent out a tweet, sent the soybean market flying. Today it's dropping right back off. I mean, farmers are really concerned about this, especially when it comes to China. Where are we at, and what's some message you're hearing from the president?
And this is where we really are seeing a little bit of pain, of course, from the farmers, and they are frustrated with the tariff situation. They've expressed that to me, but then they immediately turn around and they say, we understand why the president is doing this. Yeah. So they are feeling pain, but what they want to see is a reset when it comes to trade, and to make sure that we as the United States are getting the trade situation right.
What we need is trade and opportunity. Right now, we're at a 20% price disadvantage to the tariffs and the trade war to our counterparts in South America, and that just makes us uncompetitive and makes us lose the market. And we need a change, and we need it now.
China imports 61% of the global soybean supply, Caleb. If China doesn't start buying again from the U.S., tell me what's going to happen to you. Tell me what's going to happen to our economy.
We as American soybean farmers have a lot invested in infrastructure and the way we raise our crops, our crop rotations. And it's not something we can simply just jump around and dabble in one crop one year and something else the next. We have long-term processes that are in place, and American soybean farmers are really good at producing soybeans. What we need is strong markets and opportunity. China is our biggest export customer. Soybeans are the largest agriculture product that's exported. Many farmers, such as myself, have no other income other than our farms. And suddenly, when your biggest customer just disappears, that's a dire circumstance. What we need is trade and opportunity. Right now, we're at a 20% price disadvantage to the tariffs and the trade war to our counterparts in South America, and that just makes us uncompetitive and makes us lose the market. And we need a change, and we need it now.
Trump's illegal tariffs have single-handedly destroyed the U.S. soybean market.
As of yesterday, the price of soybeans is about $9.34 here in Iowa. The cost of production is anywhere from $11 to $11.50. So per bushel of soybeans, it's about a $2 loss. And when you add the fact that it's about 50 bushels in an acre of soybeans here, you can do the math to see how bad things are. Historically, 60% of Iowa soybeans have gone to China. With Trump's trade wars from his first administration, the U.S. has become an unreliable supplier. So instead of these soybeans going to China, it's soybeans from South America, like places like Brazil and Argentina. That leads to more grains going to be left in the bin, which leads to oversupply, which means to lower prices.
Well, the Democrats were right again, and it turns out the farmers of Iowa are completely shit out of luck, specifically because they voted for Trump, okay? Because his policies have double fucked them, okay? Starting with USAID. Now, you might say, why would USAID be connected to the farmers of Iowa? Well, turns out that USAID was one of their most reliable customers. We were spending up to $2 billion every year buying soybeans from them and then shipping them overseas to feed poor, starving children. Until our Christian president got in office and he said, "What? We are sending food overseas to feed hungry children? For Christ's sake, shut that down immediately." Well, in doing that, they have now taken away the second largest, most reliable customer for these soybean farmers in Iowa. Now, who was their number one customer? Well, it used to be China. And up until recently, they were buying 60% of our soybean exports out of America. But Daddy Trump came in and jacked up these tariffs, started a trade war with China, and now these soybean farmers have lost their number one customer. So now these soy boys are sitting on a Scrooge McDuck level of soybeans with absolutely nobody to sell them to. And that is why they are begging Daddy Trump for a bailout and for him to cut the shit with China so we can get rid of these tariffs. You know, it's amazing. Trump supporters put him in office hoping that he would just ruin the lives of all the people who they hated. But they didn't realize that Trump isn't on their team. He's on Team Billionaire, not on Team Farmer or Team Trucker or Team Everyday American. He only cares about rich people. Anyway, happy Sunday, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed your weekend. Football is back. Hell yeah, very exciting for all of us who are still able to watch it, despite the fact that there are male cheerleaders now. Oh. Anyway, guys, I love you. I'll be back tomorrow. Talk to you soon.
This is my 39th crop. I started in 1986, the year I graduated high school. I could plant an acre of beans in 1986 for $30. It irritates me that you don't have the guts to acknowledge that the people do not pay the tariffs. I don't care if it's John Deere, Case, Caterpillar, all that stuff is outsourced overseas. And the guy that pays it is the guy that purchases it. I can buy a bearing for a combine, and it's made in Taiwan or who knows where. Parts have over doubled in the last year, if you can get them. The dealer at Marshall has a backlog for almost 4 months because they can't get parts because of Trump's stupid tariffs. I think agriculture has taken a heck of a hit on a lot of misinformation, and he is not helping the farmer. I mean, we farm about 3,500 acres. We are going to be so far in the red. When are you going to stand up for us instead of kissing his ass for these trade deals? And the tariff, more so the tariffs than the trade.
Trump's Iowa betrayal leaves farmers in ruins. In the heartland of America, a state that twice voted for Donald Trump is now facing an economic...
You might have heard that Trump's Treasury Secretary, a guy named Scott Bessent, has recently given Argentina a $20 billion bailout to help bail out his billionaire buddy. But this shit just got so much worse, and it is exactly what is wrong with the corruption in Washington, D.C. right now. It's a little complicated, but stick with me. First, China stops buying American soybeans because of Donald Trump's tariffs, which are absolutely devastating farmers in Iowa and across the country by raising input costs and lowering their market prices. So our farmers, most of them are losing money on the beans that they're harvesting in the field literally right now. Meanwhile, Argentina is selling a record amount of soybeans to China to meet their demand. And the Argentine president is this guy named Javier Milei. Remember when Elon Musk had that chainsaw earlier this year at CPAC? Javier was the guy who gave it to him. He is a staunch ally of the Trump administration, and he's up for re-election this year. And then there's Bessent's billionaire buddy, a guy named Rob Citrone. He's got a lot of money tied up in the Argentine economy and needs Malay's government to get their peso, their currency, back on track. So now, not only is the Treasury Secretary planning to give another $20 billion to Argentina, that's $40 billion of taxpayer money for those of you who are keeping track at home, Donald Trump just announced that he wants the United States to import more beef from Argentina. So it's not just soybean farmers. Now Trump's selling out American cattle producers and ranchers. Like, what are we even talking about here, right? I mean, this is insanely, blatantly corrupt. They are gutting American agriculture, and for what? To make Argentina great again. This isn't what Iowans voted for, and our representatives and senators in Congress aren't doing anything to stop it. Ashley Hinson and Iowa Republicans have been a rubber stamp for reckless policies from the White House that Ashley Hinson knows are hurting Iowans. She said so herself, but she voted for it anyway. It's exactly what's wrong with Washington. It's exactly why I'm running for the United States Senate, so we can bring real change that will actually fight for our state instead of selling us out to Argentina.
I've seen a 20 to 25% increase in my farm's revenue through these programs, which is a huge deal for me as a startup farmer to demonstrate and quickly build up viability and profitability right off the bat in those kind of crucial first years. And it's allowed me to reinvest that money that I've gotten through those programs to build capacity to scale up my vegetable production. I became a farmer because I want to feed my community, feed my neighbors, and I want to make sure that local healthy food is accessible to everyone in the community. The fact that I'm facing a 20 to 25% decrease in revenue for my farm at the same time that I'm trying to make a case to loan officers at the USDA and at banks to demonstrate my profitability to buy farmland really puts in jeopardy the future of my farm and my livelihood.
To have that cutback right at the beginning of the season means we have to scramble now to try to figure out where sales are going to go. By building the infrastructure in Iowa for small local foods, it's not just small farmers, like larger farmers too could contribute to local food. It's an acre by acre basis, and every acre helps, and it's something that anybody can get into. Once the infrastructure is there, then it's easier for anybody to get involved, and it's a way to make money. And we want to focus on not taking opportunities away from Iowa farmers, but like giving opportunities to Iowa farmers.
As Iowa farmers head into the fields to harvest this year's crops, two of the state's leading Republicans are urging a deal with China to bring the world's biggest soybean buyer back into the market for U.S. soybeans. Hit with stiff tariffs from President Donald Trump, China hasn't purchased American soybeans yet for the market year that began September 1st, typically the starting date for its largest orders. China's reliance so far on South America growers farmers is dragging down prices and profits for American farmers. U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley and Iowa Agriculture Secretary Mike Negg said during separate press events on Wednesday, September 17th. China is typically the largest buyer of U.S. soybeans, spending $13.2 billion last year. As nation's second largest U.S. soybean grower after Illinois, Iowa would be hit hard by the loss of China as a buyer. The American Soybean Association said China isn't buying U.S. soybeans because they're 20% more expensive than those from South America due to tit-for-tat U.S.-Chinese tariffs.
I do feel really bad for the farmers. I really do. It's almost as if they should have been grateful for Joe Biden for bailing them out after COVID. Or grateful for all the immigrants they had working for them for exploited wages. I don't know. But what I think is really interesting is J.D. Vance, he was ahead of the curve. So he actually invested $65,000 into a company called Acre Trader. Acre Trader is buying up all the farmland that's going bankrupt now. So good job, JD. I really admire an administration that puts their own interests before the American people. I think that shows a lot of integrity.
Thank you for watching Great Minds Blacks.